Speaker, Richard Clark. Yeah. All right.
Did both of these work?
That one works.
It's not working. It's on.
Howie and I are going to kind of do a presentation together. We're going to cover different parts of a subject here that actually we're pretty excited about. And I think it's the first time we've ever publicly discussed a project we've been working on for
3 years.
5 years, I was thinking, but okay, if Howie says 3. Okay,
Officially
we
3.
thought about it for 5 years. We've been working on it for 3.
That's right.
That's about the size of it. But anyhow, you're going to get them to start the first thing. So we're going to talk about Zplus. And I know most of you are familiar with it. And there's a real special wrinkle to it tonight. And when we get to that, where's our...
Do you want to start the presentation?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's a Zplus slideshow.
We're just going to go through this first part real fast so we can get to the part that Howie's going to cover. And here we go. Where's our
Zplus PowerPoint.
There we go. We're just going to talk about ZDDP in your classic car and how to take good care of your engine. You know, the first thing you really need to realize is the people that are controlling pulling the strings in the lubrication industry sure don't give a darn about your old car. We really don't matter. So everything is really aimed at new modern cars. And the fact is, modern oil for modern cars is so good, it couldn't even have been dreamt of a decade or so ago. But that still doesn't make it ideal for our old cars. It's sort of like, you know, if you got a pet tiger or a pet elephant, you can't, you know, what you feed one of them is not the same thing you feed the other. And there are just differences in requirements. Okay, next. Okay, so, you know, the actual subject of lubrication is tribology, and it's a study of friction, and most people never heard of tribology, but that's the subject matter for those that really get into the science of lubrication. Next.
It's also good for putting people to sleep at parties.
Yeah, okay. And just for those of you that have not paid attention to it, over the years, the oil has progressed through many stages of development and refinement, and the most modern oil currently is SN oil, and that's the one on top there. And that's the one that's made for modern cars, and when you go into the store to buy oil, that's pretty much what you're going to get. Next. And there are other standards for passenger car engine oils, and if you can see,
would be the harmonized standard internationally that the American Petroleum Institute standards are based on.
And if you look, they've obsoleted all the older oils and replaced them with a newer one. And really, for what they really care about, that makes a lot of sense. If you make something a whole lot better, there's no need to keep selling the old stuff. Next. So the thing of it is, the newest oil that they've been working on and trying to bring out for a long time has the requirements for it relative to modern passenger cars are so far out there that they were originally scheduled to bring out that new super oil in 2016, and they still haven't got it out, so they keep pushing the date back. If any of you have any expensive, like European cars or something like that, you know that there's a lot of, like if you got a BMW, they got special oil for you that costs an arm and a leg, and you can go in there and get a several $100 oil change. My girlfriend has a car, and she doesn't think anything of it, but she goes in there and the oil that is nothing like what we get in the store for our cars. Next.
We could talk for a second about what's driving that, which is hybrids. So all the modern hybrid engines are running extremely lightweight oils, and they want to go lower. They're talking about 0W8s and other. It just cuts down the shear losses in the bearings, lets them make tighter bearings and more fuel efficient. But they're so incompatible with everything else, they're now splitting it into GF6 A and B. So that's the reason for it.
Yeah, Joyce, my girlfriend, has a twin-turbo BMW, and the temperature gauge on the dash starts at 220 and goes up to 325. These modern engines run at temperatures that we would consider a meltdown condition in our motors. And yet, you know, they're designed to go several 100,000 miles and run like that. And one of the biggest things that's chasing that is extremely high fuel efficiency and extremely low emissions. Of course, we really care mostly about extremely high power and to heck with emissions. But anyhow, okay, next. Anyhow, they've come up with all kinds of new tests, and all they've done is about shot themselves in the foot because they've made the tests so stringent they can't come out with the oil yet.
Right, so they're 2 years behind because the tests are so tough.
Okay,
Do you want to
next.
talk about that new test? Or?
Yeah, go ahead, Tal.
Okay, the previous test, which was the Sequence IVA or I5A, basically had I think it was a Nissan engine, 4-cylinder. They would run 800 RPM for, 300 seconds, and then go to 1500 RPM for 600 seconds, and repeat that for an hour, or excuse me, for 10 hours. Or, no, that's 100 hours. Sorry about that, I can't read it. The new test is extreme. It uses a turbocharged engine, and it cycles it from 800 to 4300 RPM every 7 to 8 seconds for 24,000 cycles. So that's the oils they can't get to perform correctly yet. But that's their new standard. And that the Sequence I5B will be the new cam wear test. And they're having a lot of trouble meeting it.
Next. So what we're really talking about here are additives and their importance. And it'll make sense when we get to the end. So, you know, these are the reasons why you have to have additives in oil. I mean, you know, the oil they dig up out of the ground's been there millions of years, but if you stuck it in your car, you wouldn't have, you'd have a problem. And they refine it, and they come up with different kinds of chemicals to put in the oil. And when it really comes down to it, that's what makes one oil different or better than another. It's what makes one oil last longer than another. It's one of the things that makes your engine last longer and perform better with one oil than another. And those additives, they're the things that wear out. If it wasn't for just additives, you could probably run your oil forever like you do in your lawnmower, you know. How many in here change the oil in your lawnmower? Okay, well, that's about why lawnmowers...
How many use synthetic in their lawnmowers?
Hot dog. Okay. Anyhow, I know Mike, so that's probably true. At any rate, all I'm saying is it's the additives that wear out, and that's the real reason you have to change the oil in your car. Next. When you talk about ZDDP, there's a lot of people talk about it, and you hear, oh, you got to have zinc in your oil and all this kind of stuff. It's a subject that most people are totally clueless about. You know, ZDDP is a lot more complex than just zinc. Zinc is something you dip antennas and stuff like, and gates and outdoor fences in to make them so they're resistant to weather. And we're not talking about zinc. It's a real complex molecule consisting of zinc and phosphorus and
alcohols.
Yeah, there you go. Anyhow, next. And ZDP has been a very important part of oil for about 50 years. And it's one of the things that's enabled modern engines to actually develop. But truth in advertising is something that we don't always get exposed to. For example, ZDP is a great additive, but it isn't perfect. And it's got a downside. Now, if you're a dairy farmer and you sell milk and you want to do a television ad about drinking milk, you say it builds bones and strong teeth because it has calcium. You don't say it's full of fat and it's going to make you overweight if you drink too much of it. You ignore the bad side about your product and you emphasize the good side. And ZDP has a good side. It's a great anti-wear additive, and it's the best additive anybody's ever come up with for protecting not only sliding metal parts, but just metal parts that have high pressure. And we're not just talking about flat tappet cams here. These super oils that these companies are working on trying to develop are far advanced from anything we're even using currently. And when they come out, they're going to be absolutely great to use in our cars with a few caveats. But next. So anyhow, the conventional ZDP works by creating a film, a sacrificial film on the parts that are rubbing and in contact with each other. But the downside of ZDP is it increases friction in your engine. And
on those rubbing parts.
On those rubbing parts. And, you know, we created a pretty good business helping take care of older engines and recommending an additive that I'm sure a lot of you use. And if you really study the subject, when we first came out with it a few years back, a lot of people scoffed at what we were doing and said, oh, that's nonsense, and I use this kind of oil and such and such. Next, ZDP doesn't last forever. That's a downside of it. You have to change your oil. It depletes. Here's a depletion chart. That's, if you notice the old saying 2,000–3,000 miles, that's really the knee in the curve there where it really starts to lose its ability to protect things. And so the only thing now, you buy a new car and it has a 10 and 15,000 mile oil change. I want to scream when people tell me, oh, I got my Turbo Regal and I got this new kind of oil and it says on there it's good for 15,000 miles. It's only good for 15,000 miles if you put it in a modern engine. You put it in your old-timey engine, and it has none of these new things that have been developed in this oil are going to, you know, protect your motor after 2,000 or 3,000 miles. So the old thing of, excuse me, I got somebody calling me. I'm gonna have to hang up on them. Excuse me.
Who was that?
I don't know. I can't believe I haven't got 25 calls up till now. But anyhow.
It's usually one of these guys.
Huh? Okay. Who out there is calling me? Anyhow, you've got to think about that. You don't get to go 15,000 miles just because it says so on the bottle. Okay, just make sure that's clear. That doesn't matter with your GS or your Grand National.
We have a tech brief on that subject, actually, on oil change life. Some of the charts in it are a little difficult to explain. I know I've had people email me and say, what the heck is this chart showing oil life and cost versus miles? But the long shot of it, there is an optimum function for any given engine for oil changes. And the older the engine, the shorter the time it is.
Next. People ask all the time, how long does oil last? Well, like I said, it's been in the ground for millions of years and it's still here and it's working just fine. Additives, not so much. They can go bad in a relatively short amount of time, and you should always consider that. they go bad sitting in your crankcase really fast because of acids and that are a byproduct of combustion. So remember, when you put your car up for the winter, change the oil, and don't leave stuff sitting in your engine like that. Get them all the time with all kinds of damage from sitting, and putting a car in storage for a long period of time is an art. And if you want to do it and protect it when it fires up after sitting around for a year or 2 years, we got a car a little while back, been sitting for 20 years. Guy got frustrated with it 20 years ago and parked it in his garage, and never, long story what it took to get that one going. Anyhow, next.
Actually, I was going to say the last sentence
okay.
on that last slide, if you go back real quick, is kind of the bottom line to that whole additive thing. If modern oils had additives, had adequate levels of ZDP, they wouldn't be compatible with modern engines. That's kind of the long and short of modern additive technology. Next.
There is no substitute for it. Yet, okay? But there are ways to make it better. And that's what the end of the presentation's about. Next. And here's, you got all kinds of choices of oil for your car, and people ask me all the time, what one should I use? Really doesn't matter if you got the right additive. Modern oil is so good that the oil that your car was designed with 20, 30 years ago, there wasn't an oil out there back then that could compete with the worst one of those. Next.
Especially if you choose the correct viscosity for bearing clearances.
Yeah.
That's the one caveat there.
In 2005, Howie and I started on a search for a solution and developed ZDP as it is in this bottle, and branded
2 generations
the name.
ago, not as in this bottle.
Yeah,
This is
that's
new.
right. Yeah, and we didn't say anything about it. We didn't say new and improved or anything like that. But there's been a whole lot of improvement. This is not the same thing we were selling in 2006. It is light years ahead of it, but it's light years behind what's coming. Next.
This is the I told you so part.
Yeah, people, everybody said that the oil companies shot it down. Everybody said it wasn't necessary, and yet now virtually every oil company has some sort of a competitor to this product, the one that they said wasn't necessary.
And GM had an engineer write a paper specifically attacking us for advocating the use of a ZDP additive, and then 5 years later ended up splitting the recommendations and saying, yes, the older cars should use enhanced ZDP levels. So,
Next.
told you so.
So I think we were somewhat vindicated. Next. 2015. Howie, I'm going to let Howie's the one that spent most of the time working on this, so I'm going to let him finish talking about this. We've actually had this developed for a year. It's not made it to market yet, but we actually have a friction reducer that we can put in the ZDDP, and it actually makes it perform as good as it ever did before, and without the downside of friction. So it's sort of like
Less downside.
yeah, less downside. So I'm going to let him just finish this part because he's the one that's worked on it most of the time. Thank you.
Thanks for stealing my punchline, Richard. So, as many of you guys who race know, a lot of the highest performing race oils have very low ZDDP levels, and part of that's due to the frictional loss that you don't want to waste power taking. But we decided, well, let me just let this video play here. This is, oh good, there's no sound, but that's okay. This is our test bed, and it basically consists of an inverted V8, which has a oiling system in place of the crankshaft. And if people can see that clearly, you'll notice there are pistons in the bores in the wrong way. And that was just to keep oil from leaking out of them. They're O-ringed in there. But it allowed us to drive it with, it's similar to a Spintron. It allowed us to drive it with an electric motor and put some instrumentation on the motor drive and see how much power it took to spin the cam. And then we varied the temperature of the engine and the lubrication composition. And we were able to come up with a new formulation which showed between 15 to 50% less actual valve train friction. Next. And I think I just said that. Next. Okay, so the next two slides are charts of the performance of this new generation of Zplus, which tentatively I guess we're calling Zplus Ultra. And what we would do is control the temperature of the block with a mold temperature controller, and then also control the temperature of the oil. If that video hadn't locked up, you would have seen basically we put a dry sump system on it with heating bands on the sump and control the oil temperature. In M40C, which is relatively cold, we found that the optimum dosing, well, it continued to increase in performance past 0.5%, but with ever reducing yields. So 0.5% was what we finalized as a dose. Now, if you look at the speed, obviously nobody runs their cam at 10 RPM, but that was to show the difference because they're relatively similar up around 100 to 1,000 RPM. Next. However, if once the temperature is raised to 100 C, you see a large difference. And this is where the boundary effect comes into play. In a cam lifter system, it runs at hydrodynamic lubrication. You know, there's an oil film at low RPMs and low temperatures. As the temperature gets high and the RPM gets high, there's actually starts to be contact between the two. And that's where, when the oil is thin, the performance of the new friction-reducing additive really shows up. So, for instance, at 1,000 RPM, with 0.5%, we're showing a 0.15% or 0.15 relative friction compared to just the base oil was at over 0.3. So it's about a 50% reduction in friction with oils hot at 1,000 RPM. Next. Okay, and I guess that's it. Just a summary of who Zplus is. Thank you very much.